Imagine, if you will, just walking into your childhood home. You step through that front door, the smell of familiar wood and old carpet hits you, and you feel that immediate visceral rush of safety.
Right, exactly.
But then you walk down into the basement, the exact place where you spent countless hours with your friends, and as you turn on the lights, you realize that the walls are wrapped in police tape.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there is literal forensic dust on the coffee table. You suddenly understand that the sanctuary you grew up in was actually hiding a horrific crime on the entire time.
That is deeply unsettling.
It is, and that deeply unsettling psychological phenomenon, that shattering of a safe space, is exactly what millions of fans experience today when they try to watch a rerun of that '70s show. Welcome to Off the Record. I am so incredibly thrilled to be sitting down with you, our listener, as we unpack the total radioactive collapse of a cultural sanctuary.
It is an absolute pleasure to be here, and I have to say, your metaphor of the crime scene is structurally perfect for what we are undertaking today. We aren't just doing a retrospective on a piece of media here. We are conducting a cultural autopsy. We are examining how a beloved, cheaply lit, seemingly innocent multicam sitcom about suburban Wisconsin teenagers became permanently and inextricably entangled with criminal convictions, cult allegations, the betrayal discourse, and the total irreversible collapse of nostalgia.
Yes, the collapse of nostalgia itself.
Exactly. We are pinpointing the exact mechanism of how modern internet culture retroactively audits our past.
Precisely. And before we dive headfirst into this massive epistemological breakdown, I do want to take a brief moment to speak directly to you. Yes, you, listening right now. If you appreciate these rigorous, unfiltered deep dives into the mechanics of culture, please head over to our official YouTube channel at HAM-OTR.
That is at HAM-OTR.
We implore you to like and subscribe. Your support is the actual engine that allows us to keep pulling back the curtain on these complex media narratives, and frankly, it keeps the lights on in this booth.
Please do subscribe. It justifies our ongoing existence in this heavily soundproofed room. And speaking of our existence here, I must introduce the accoutrements for today's analysis.
Oh yes, please do.
Our director, Ryan Thomas, has curated a highly specific spread for this deep dive. To mirror the Wisconsin setting of the show, he has procured an elevated supper club meal. We just finished a beautifully rare prime rib, and to accompany our descent into madness today, he poured this phenomenal 18-year single malt scotch.
It really is incredible.
It is, which frankly is surprisingly refined and complex for a man I would like to strangle with an XLR cable and then do something utterly unspeakable to against the mixing console.
Well, the scotch is indeed exquisite. Let's take our first sip.
Cheers.
Oh wow, that has a beautiful burn to it. Okay, so let's transition into the absolute epicenter of this show's legacy collapse. We cannot understand the macro-level destruction of this media property without starting at the inciting incident. We have to examine the Danny Masterson catastrophe, not just as a legal event, but as the destruction of a generational archetype.
Yes. The blast radius of the Masterson case is entirely unparalleled in modern television history.
Totally unparalleled.
But to understand the true magnitude of the cultural devastation, like the actual why behind the collective shock, we first have to understand the specific psychological real estate that his character occupied. Danny Masterson portrayed Stephen Hyde.
Right.
And in the late 1990s and early 2000s, Hyde was not merely a supporting character. He was a defining anti-authority avatar for an entire generation of viewers. He was the skeptic.
He was the cynical, detached, effortlessly cool rebel who saw right through the hypocrisy of the adult world. Hyde was the guy who told you that the government was lying, that corporations were evil, and that institutions existed only to protect themselves. And the irony here is so heavy, it practically possesses its own gravitational pull. The character, whose entire comedic premise was built on a deep, paranoid suspicion of government and systemic corruption, was played by a man who would eventually, allegedly, use his proximity to one of the most powerful, litigious institutions in Hollywood to shield himself from catastrophic criminal consequences for over a decade.
It is staggering. The archetype shattered.
Yeah.
And the reality we are left with is jarring to the point of nausea. Because this isn't abstract. After years of mounting allegations, intensive investigative reporting, civil lawsuits, and grueling public scrutiny, Danny Masterson was convicted in 2023 on 2 counts of forcible rape.
God.
He was sentenced to 30 years to life in prison. We are not talking about a misdemeanor, a tax evasion charge, or some minor tabloid infidelity scandal. We are talking about the absolute highest level of interpersonal criminal destruction. It is a collapse of magnitude that completely obliterates the cultural memory of the series.
It really does.
Yeah.
And here's where I want to push back slightly on the broader landscape of media consumption, or at least pose a structural question to you. Because we see dramatic actors commit terrible crimes, and while it's awful, it doesn't necessarily destroy the genre they work in.
That is a very fair point.
Right. So is it fundamentally harder for the human brain to process the monstrous behavior of a sitcom star compared to a dramatic actor? Think about it. When you watch a gritty, violent HBO drama, you are already entering a dark universe. You are intellectually prepared for moral ambiguity.
Absolutely.
But sitcoms, especially multicam sitcoms with laugh tracks, are fundamentally engineered to create the illusion of comfort, innocence, and parasocial friendship. Does the engineered intimacy of the sitcom format make the psychological betrayal feel infinitely worse?
Oh, that is an incredibly astute observation. You are such a good girl for bringing the parasocial mechanics into this. Hold your glass out. Let me pour you a little more of this scotch.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. The betrayal is exponentially worse because of the geography and the frequency of the sitcom. The Foreman basement was a meticulously constructed safe space for millions of teenagers who, frankly, did not have a safe space of their own in reality.
Exactly.
When a dramatic actor commits a crime, it ruins the suspension of disbelief for a 2-hour film. When a sitcom star commits a crime of this severity, it infects the reruns. It poisons the basement. It is a daily syndicated intrusion. You cannot watch an episode at 2 in the morning without the shadow of a 30-year prison sentence looming over the canned laughter.
It's like a computer virus, but instead of just corrupting your new files, it actively crawls backward into your hard drive and rewrites the metadata of your old saved family photos.
Wow, I love that.
It's retroactive contamination. The actor doesn't just ruin the present day, they ruin your past. They reach back through time and taint your own childhood memories of sitting on the carpet, eating cereal, and watching the show. You just can't separate the art from the artist when the art was essentially pretending to be your friend.
That is a phenomenal metaphor. The metadata of our memories is rewritten. But to truly grasp the mechanics of this situation, we must understand that Masterson's crimes and his ability to evade justice for so long did not occur in a vacuum.
No, they definitely did not.
The sociological puzzle here requires us to look at the power structures that allegedly shielded him, which leads us logically into the incredibly dark shadow that Scientology has cast over the entire legacy of that 70s show. How does a secret stay buried in Hollywood for that long? It requires infrastructure.
Right. And as we move into this, I can definitely feel the scotch warming up the analytical engines a bit. Because this is where the narrative terrifyingly expands from an individual failing to a massive institutional nightmare. The mechanisms of protection here are fascinating and just, frankly, horrifying.
They are. Masterson was, for decades, one of Hollywood's most visible, vocal, and influential Scientologists. And during his trials, the reporting surrounding the case brought forth massive, chilling allegations of institutional pressure, witness intimidation, and systemic cover-ups tied directly to the Church of Scientology.
It's just so dark.
The victims alleged, under oath, that they were harassed, followed, had their pets poisoned, and were terrified into silence by the organization's intelligence apparatus. We are talking about a sophisticated mechanism of suppression.
And suddenly, the public scrutiny isn't just isolated to Masterson. The internet's attention acts like a high-powered blacklight illuminating the entire past, because he wasn't the only one deeply connected to the church.
Not at all.
Laura Prepon, who played Donna Pinciotti, was also publicly associated with Scientology for years, although she later stated in interviews that she was no longer practicing. But here's the terrifying thing about the internet. The internet does not care about the timeline of your exit when the algorithm is actively hunting for engagement.
Exactly. The algorithm incentivizes the hunt. The internet becomes an ad hoc army of amateur forensic psychologists. This is what the source material brilliantly labels the retroactive contamination effect.
Right.
Fans who previously viewed this cast as a wholesome, aspirational surrogate family suddenly start digging through the digital archives. They pull up old blooper reels, red carpet interviews from 2002, behind-the-scenes DVD extras. But they are no longer watching for nostalgia.
No, they're looking for proof.
They are hunting for cult clues. They are analyzing the micro-expressions between the actors, trying to map out Hollywood power dynamics and institutional leverage in real time.
It's just like the childhood home metaphor. You're rewatching a home movie and suddenly realizing the house is haunted. You see an interview from 2004, and where you used to see friendly, improvised banter between co-stars, you now see a deeply entrenched power dynamic where one person allegedly has an intelligence agency backing them, and the other person knows it. It completely breaks the... Wait, hold on. What is Ryan doing?
Are you fucking kidding?
Is he flashing the light?
Ryan is flashing the red light in the booth. He wants us to do the vocal exercise. We are in the middle of a high-level epistemological breakdown of celebrity cult dynamics and the algorithmic reevaluation of history, and this absolute shithead wants us to do a warm-up.
We have to do it. You know what's in the writer? He's pointing at the prompter. Let's just get it over with so we can get back to the analysis. Deep breath.
Fine. Let's indulge the tyrant in the glass box.
Liam Neeson's niece, Lisa Neeson, recently leased a really nice Nissan.
Liam Neeson's niece, Lisa Neeson, recently leased a really nice Nissan. God, I hate him. I hate him with a fiery passion.
You really do.
But honestly, look at how the studio lighting hits his collarbone when he leans over the mixing board to press that button. His chest looks phenomenal in that handling. It's absolutely infuriating how attractive his bone structure is when he's being a dictator. Anyway, where were we? The retroactive contamination of the archives.
Yeah, the archives, I don't know. I get so sad thinking about it. I'm sorry, the scotch is definitely hitting my bloodstream now, but I used to love Donna Pinciotti so much.
I know, she was great.
She was the cool, tall, feminist girl next door who listened to Led Zeppelin and didn't take any crap from Eric. She was an icon for a specific type of awkward teenage girl. And now, every time I think about Donna, I have to think about auditing sessions and e-meters and alleged witness intimidation tactics.
There's a lot of process.
Nothing is pure anymore. We are all just decaying in this endless cyclical churn of ruined media. My entire childhood is basically just an active crime scene at this point.
Hey, look at me. It's okay. You're getting a little melancholic, sweetie. Drink your scotch. The loss of innocence is simply the toll we pay to live in the digital age.
I know.
You can't let the collapse of the illusion destroy your capacity to analyze it.
Yeah.
And frankly, the Scientology shield, as terrifying and systemic as it allegedly was only one mechanism of protection operating in this ecosystem. If we really want to unpack the ruined innocence and the total collapse of the sitcom family, we have to look at the other pillar of Hollywood power. We have to talk about the absolute, unmitigated disaster of the character reference letters.
The letters. Oh my God, the letters. Let me just pour a little more scotch here. This is the Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis betrayal discourse.
Right.
This is where the story goes from a true crime tragedy to a massive sociological case study in PR hubris.
Yes. We are officially crossing the Rubicon into the betrayal discourse. Let me top you up. Cheers. Now let's get into the absolute fuck up of those letters.
Cheers.
We need to look at the mechanics of why the public reacted the way they did. Because it wasn't just Masterson who went down. When he fell, he dragged the literal prom king and queen of Hollywood down into the abyss with him.
So, to set the factual stage for you listening out there. During the sentencing proceedings for Masterson, letters written by Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis were officially submitted to the judge. They were pleading for leniency for Masterson. And the language, the specific rhetoric used in these letters was mind-boggling.
Utterly delusional.
They described Masterson in these incredibly favorable, glowing terms. Kutcher painted him as a role model, as a man of exceptional character who supposedly kept Kutcher away from drugs in the late 90s. This was submitted to the court while Masterson was sitting there, legally convicted by a jury of his peers of 2 counts of forcible rape.
It was a catastrophic miscalculation of public sentiment. And the backlash, the public backlash was not just immediate. It was a ferocious biblical flood of absolute shit. People were losing their minds online.
Completely losing it.
But why? Why did it hit so hard? Because it completely shattered the illusion that these deeply beloved celebrities possessed any moral compass outside the walls of their own gated communities. It proved, in ink, that Hollywood loyalty, that the protection of the in-group will always supersede the safety of normal, working-class victims.
And the cognitive dissonance was just too much for the public to bear. And then they tried to fix it. They released that apology video.
It's apology video. My God, if you study crisis communications, the visual rhetoric of that video belongs in a museum of terrible PR.
Yeah.
They're sitting there wearing neutral, muted tones, zero makeup, staring into the camera lens like they're in a hostage situation being held at gunpoint by their own publicists.
It was so bleak.
And they deliver this incredibly over-rehearsed, emotionally sterile explanation. They claimed the letters were only meant to provide historical character references for the judge, not to undermine the victims' testimonies. As if the internet gives a single flying fuck about the semantic legal nuance of a character reference when multiple victims of sexual violence are involved. The public does not care about your intent, they care about the impact of your power.
But the reason the impact was so devastating, we have to talk about why the fall was so steep. It's because of who Ashton Kutcher had systematically engineered himself to become. That's the real tragedy here. He wasn't just playing Michael Kelso anymore.
Right, the tech pivot.
In the early 2010s, Ashton Kutcher pulled off arguably one of the greatest, most successful PR pivots in modern celebrity history. He transitioned from the goofy, trucker hat-wearing, prank-pulling host of Punk'd to this serious, intellectual Silicon Valley tech optimist. He was giving TED Talks.
Yeah, he really was everywhere.
He was a premier early-stage investor in Uber and Airbnb. But most importantly, he co-founded Thorn, an anti-trafficking nonprofit organization dedicated to building software to protect children from sexual exploitation. He actively branded himself as the tech savior protecting the most vulnerable people in society.
Exactly. He built an entire billion-dollar personal brand on the explicit promise of protecting the vulnerable, and then he turned around and used his personalized stationery to vouch for the character of a convicted rapist. The human brain cannot reconcile those two truths. The cognitive dissonance was deafening.
It was too much for anyone to process.
And internet culture, which is algorithmic, engagement-driven, and utterly ruthless, absolutely devoured him for it. He was forced to step down from his leadership roles at Thorn. He went from being this universally celebrated, untouchable philanthropist to a massive internet suspicion magnet in a matter of 48 hours. The internet, structurally, loves nothing more than dragging a self-proclaimed saint back down into the mud.
It's the algorithm of distrust. Once people suspect you're hiding something or that your persona is a fabrication, they don't just judge your present actions, they initiate a full-scale audit of your past. They start digging through every old interview, every old red carpet photo, looking for the cracks in the facade. First comes the public backlash, then comes the memification of your apology, and finally it settles into total paranoid suspicion.
And Mila.
Yeah.
Mila Kunis caught the shrapnel from every conceivable angle here. For over a decade, Mila and Ashton were the undisputed perfect couple. They were the safe harbor of celebrity gossip. They were the ones who were grounded.
They were the dream.
They met as kids on a sitcom, went their separate ways, married other people, divorced, and miraculously found their way back to each other. It was a literal fairy tale. Audiences projected so much desperate authenticity onto their marriage because we want to believe true love exists in a cynical industry.
The fragility of that narrative, it just breaks my heart. It really, really does. Because they weren't just a celebrity couple, they were our couple. We grew up with them. And the shift, the sudden, violent shift from being the normal, grounded couple to being the dead center focus of this massive betrayal discourse was just so brutal. And, you know, I know exactly how that feels. I really do.
Yeah.
Let me just take a very large gulp of this scotch.
All right, where are we going with this? You're tearing up.
No, listen to me. Listen. Because the burden of loyalty is so incredibly heavy, it crushes you. Years ago, I had this friend. Let's call him, well, it doesn't matter what his name is. But he was my best friend. And he did something terrible at his corporate job. Like massive embezzlement, lying to investors, just objectively awful, destructive stuff. And I didn't know the extent of it. I swear to God, I didn't know. But the investigators called me because I was his reference, and I vouched for him. I told them, no, he's a good guy. He's just stressed. He wouldn't do that maliciously. And then the full truth came out, and it was worse than anyone thought. And suddenly everyone in our friend group looked at me like I was the monster. Like I was holding the knife with him. I wasn't. I was just trying to protect my friend.
Oh, honey.
I just loved him. And you love people, you give them your heart, and they turn out to be garbage. And then by proxy, you're garbage too. Why is everyone so incredibly mean? Why can't we just love each other?
Oh, sweet little slut. Come here. Come here. Give me your hand. Don't cry. Don't cry into the microphone. It's okay.
Yeah.
You're just a bitch who cares way too much about broken people. You have a massive bleeding heart. It's not your fault.
It just hurts so much.
Honestly, it's Ryan's fault. Ryan Thomas poured these scotches way, way too heavy because he's a sadistic sociopath who wants to see us emotionally bleed for the audio mix. Look at him in there, sitting behind the glass, sipping his artisanal sparkling water like a fucking Roman emperor watching gladiators die. I hate him. But you're right. The burden of loyalty is a trap. It's a psychological prison. Ashton and Mila fell into the trap of believing their personal affection for someone overrode the objective, judicial reality of that person's actions.
Betrayal discourse. Wow.
What are you looking at?
Just betrayal discourse. Say it out loud with me. Betrayal discourse. It's so profoundly beautiful. It's like we betray each other, right? That's the human flaw, and then we discourse about it online. That's the societal mechanism.
Sure, yeah.
It's the entire human condition wrapped up in two incredibly lyrical words. Wait, what was I saying? Right, betrayal. It's a discourse. I think I just figured out society.
You are absolutely brilliantly, spectacularly hammered right now.
Right.
But hold on to that pseudo-intellectual genius, because Kutcher isn't the only one whose past got violently ripped open by the internet's retroactive ethical audit. We need to pivot. The algorithm wasn't done with the cast. We need to talk about Fez. We need to talk about the epistemological nightmare of Wilmer Valderrama.
Okay, you're right. Let me reset the podcast. Welcome back to Off the Record. We are professionals. We are doing journalism. Let us examine the epistemological framework of Wilmer Valderrama's dating history in the early 2000s and the sociocultural ramifications thereof.
Nailed the transition. Truly seamless, like watching a car crash in reverse. You're doing great, sweetie. So, long before Danny Masterson was ever formally charged or convicted, Wilmer Valderrama was already the subject of intense, recurring internet controversy. And it centered almost entirely on his highly publicized dating history during the mid-2000s.
Right, because if we look at the historical data, he dated several very famous, very young celebrities, Mandy Moore, Lindsay Lohan, Demi Lovato, and in many of these cases, the relationships began when these women were barely adults, or sometimes just crossing the legal threshold.
Exactly.
And the crazy thing is, at the time, the mainstream tabloid media just treated it like, oh, look at young Hollywood having fun, look at this Casanova. But when you run that exact same data set through the lens of the modern internet, post-Me Too, post-Reckoning, it looks incredibly predatory. It highlights a massive structural imbalance of power dynamics.
Exactly. We're talking about the difference between de jure legality and de facto morality. And the internet, as we've established, is a permanent, searchable archive. So the modern audience didn't just look at the Wikipedia timelines of these relationships. They pulled up the actual audio receipts.
The audio receipts are so bad.
They resurfaced these old, hyper-misogynistic, deeply uncomfortable shock jock radio interviews that Valderrama did to promote himself. Interviews on Howard Stern where he was explicitly bragging about his sexual conquests, rating these young women's bodies on a numerical scale, telling incredibly graphic, intimate stories about young pop stars, stories that aged like a bucket of unpasteurized milk in the Mojave Desert.
Shock jock radio. Oh my God. Wait, can we talk about the cultural phenomena of shock jock radio for a second? The early 2000s were literally psychotic. You would just turn on your car radio at 8 a.m., driving to your high school homeroom, and there would be 3 grown men blowing air horns, hitting sound effect buttons, and asking a 19-year-old Disney actress deeply invasive questions about her virginity.
It was an absolute fever dream.
What was fundamentally wrong with us as a society, we just listened to it. We just sat there eating our Cheerios and listened to men absolutely degrade human beings for morning drive time ratings. It was a collective hallucination.
It was a profoundly, fundamentally toxic era. The hegemonic masculinity of the 2000s media landscape was a wasteland. But this gets to the actual philosophical meat of our entire episode. The deep, grinding friction between legality and cultural acceptance. Because, importantly, we have to state that many of these relationships Valderrama had were technically, legally permissible.
Right, technically.
The women were of the legal age of consent. But legality is the absolute lowest possible bar for human decency. The law tells you what will put you in a cage. It doesn't tell you what makes you a good person. And what we are seeing right now in real time is that legality and cultural acceptance are no longer perfectly synonymous.
Yes, exactly. The internet retroactively audits history through contemporary moral standards. It's an algorithmic IRRS. Wait, is that fair, though? Let's push back on our own thesis. Because we are sitting here, highly educated and very drunk in 2024, judging people from 2004 by ethical standards that literally did not exist in the mainstream back then.
That's an interesting point.
That's chronological snobbery. That's like getting mad at a medieval knight for not sorting his plastics into the recycling bin. He didn't know. But wait, no, dating teenagers as a grown man with institutional power is bad in any era. So it is fair. We absolutely should judge them. Burn the entire infrastructure down. Wait, I'm confused. What side of this argument am I currently on?
You're on the side of justice, you beautiful, chaotic disaster. You are arguing both sides of the dialectic perfectly. But it is complicated, Because we, the collective audience, did accept it back then. The culture allowed it, the magazines promoted it, the paparazzi profited off it. But now, actions that were dismissed as cheeky tabloid gossip are suddenly reframed as ethically abhorrent abuses of power. And Valderrama became the poster child for this retroactive audit. The internet looked at his past and said, no, we are revoking your cultural pass. But honestly,
What?
I can't even focus on Valderrama's power dynamics right now because I keep making intense, unbroken eye contact with Ryan through the glass.
Why are you looking at him? Ignore him. We are doing a deep dive. We are talking about the ethical boundaries of early 2000s celebrity culture and the retroactive judgment of the masses.
I physically cannot ignore him. Look at him sitting in there, tapping his stupid little silver pen.
Yeah.
He thinks he's so vastly superior to us because he's sober. He thinks he's a fucking intellectual because he wears those wire-rimmed glasses and drinks artisanal spring water while we decompose on mic.
Yeah.
He is a cunt. He really, truly is.
Oh my God, you cannot say that.
But God in heaven, the way his jaw clenches when I swear into this microphone, the muscle tension is incredible. I swear to God, when we finally wrap this recording, I want to march into that booth, lock the heavy door, and I want him to absolutely destroy me. I want him to ruin my life against the digital mixing console. I want him to make me forget my own government name.
Oh my God, we are recording. You are speaking into a live microphone that goes directly into the ears of our listeners. Remember, the listener, you, yes, you, the listener, you're the only person in the world who really understands this right now. You're sitting in your car, or you're doing your laundry, or you're pretending to work on a spreadsheet, and you get it. You get that Ryan is a massive problem, but he's also the only solution. Please, I am begging you, go to @HAM-OTR and like and subscribe so we can keep funding this operation and keep talking about Ryan's jawline.
The listener knows I'm right. The listener understands the profound duality of man. But anyway, what were we actually talking about? The show. That 70s show. The Autopsy. Let's review the findings. We've talked about the convicted rapist. We've talked about the alleged intelligence apparatus of the cult. We've talked about the traitorous, hypocritical tech bro and his fragile, shattered wife. We've talked about the age gap Lothario and the shock jock archives. When you lay it all out, it sounds like an absolute nightmare, doesn't it? It sounds like a radioactive, toxic wasteland where joy goes to die, which brings us organically to the most glorious, bizarre, and genuinely hilarious cultural development of this entire miserable saga.
Topher Grace.
Topher fucking Grace.
The internet's only normal one. This is so beautiful to me. This makes me want to cry again, but like happy tears this time. It's a redemption arc we didn't know we needed.
Let's get into the mechanics of the accidental wisdom of the outcast. Because during the original run of the show, Topher Grace, who played the lead character, Eric Foreman, had this very persistent, low-level, negative reputation in the entertainment media. The rumor mill always insisted that he was distant, he was awkward, he was difficult to work with because he wasn't a team player. There were all these blind items and stories that he flat out refused to socialize with the rest of the cast after work. He didn't go to their house parties, he didn't hang out at the clubs with them. He just did his job and left.
And people judged him so harshly for it, the fans were actually mad at him. When he left the series before the final season to go do movies like Spider-Man 3, people saw it as definitive evidence of this bitter, arrogant, interpersonal conflict. They thought he was a snob. He thought he was too good for the humble sitcom that made him famous. It genuinely hurt his public reputation for years. He was permanently branded as the ungrateful guy who abandoned his TV family.
And then the timeline shifts. The scandals explode. Masterson goes to prison for decades. Kutcher and Kunis get dragged through the public town square for their letters. Valderrama gets audited by the algorithm. The entire core cast goes down in absolute flames. And almost literally overnight, internet culture takes Topher Grace's antisocial, awkward behavior from 20 years ago and entirely radically reframes it.
He became a meme, a prophet, the lone, brilliant survivor who sensed the danger before anyone else.
A prophet. Oh my God. The internet literally turned Eric Foreman into John the Baptist crying out in the wilderness. It is the funniest shit I have ever seen in my life. The exact same introverted behavior that was previously interpreted as insufferable arrogance was suddenly hailed as absolute genius-level self-preservation. The internet collectively decided the narrative was that Topher Grace walked onto that soundstage on day one, looked around at the Scientologists, the future felons, and the shock jock braggarts, and said, absolutely fucking not, I'm going to go read a paperback novel in my trailer until my scene is called.
You know what? Listen to me. You are my Topher Grace. You really, truly are. You sit here with me in the soundproof booth, and the world outside is so chaotic and toxic and scary, and Ryan is out there being mean and withholding and incredibly hot, but you protect me. We are the survivors of this industry.
We are the surviving outcast prophets of the deep dive world.
But the truth is, and we have to maintain our analytical integrity here, the objective truth is probably way, way less dramatic. Topher probably just wanted to go home and play video games because he was an introvert. But culturally, the reality doesn't matter. He became a symbol. He became the universal shorthand for escaping Hollywood toxicity. It shows exactly how fast internet narratives evolve and invert themselves. We just project whatever psychological need we have onto these celebrities. We make them monsters when we need a villain. And we make them prophets when we need a hero. They aren't real human beings to us.
They're just avatars, empty vessels for our own anxieties. And that, my sweet, beautiful, weeping friend, brings us to the tragic conclusion of our autopsy. We have to address the terminal problem with nostalgia television. But first, we are completely out of scotch. Look at the bottle. It's completely empty. Ryan, you cheap bastard, we need more fluid to finish this thesis. No. He's shaking his head. Fine. We will finish this profound analysis on fumes.
The downfall of that 70s show isn't just a contained story about one messy cast. It reflects a massive tectonic cultural shift in how we fundamentally consume media in the 21st century. The old debate was, can we separate the art from the artist? But streaming culture makes that debate physically impossible, because in the old days of broadcast television, a show would end, the finale would air, and the property would disappear into the ether. Maybe you'd catch a random syndicated rerun on cable at a hotel. But now, Netflix, Hulu, Peacock, everything is permanently, instantly accessible on the device in your pocket. The archive is always open.
And because the archive is always open, the scandals retroactively attach themselves to the media forever. The metadata is locked. You try to sit down on a Tuesday night, having a hard week, and you just want to watch an episode to feel comforted. You want to feel like you're 14 years old again, safe in your living room, but you can't. The emotional texture of the series has mutated on a molecular level. A sarcastic joke that was completely harmless in 1999 is now coming directly out of the mouth of a convicted rapist or an alleged cult member. The show didn't change a single frame of film. The script is identical. But we changed. The audience changed. Our awareness corrupted the file.
And once you reinterpret media through the lens of real-world scandal, you physically cannot unsee it. The psychological process is completely irreversible, which is exactly why Netflix's attempt to revive the franchise with that 90s show was doomed to be so profoundly complicated and ultimately disappointing.
Ah, yes, the impossible revival problem. Netflix, in their infinite algorithmic greed, tried to cash in on the residual nostalgia. They literally rebuilt the physical set of the basement. They brought back the original cast for legacy cameos. But by the time the sequel finally dropped on the platform, the public image of those specific actors was radioactive. Masterson obviously wasn't invited because he was actively facing trial. Kutcher and Kunis made their cameo, but soon after, they were getting utterly annihilated online for the letters.
So instead of the audience talking about the new cast of kids or the writing or the jokes, the entire cultural discourse surrounding that 90s show instantly devolved into toxic arguments about the real-world scandals of the original cast. The revival inherited a completely contaminated cultural memory. The network tried to serve us a warm, comforting slice of nostalgia on a silver platter, but the plate was covered in arsenic. The internet never ever forgets, which means nostalgia itself is an inherently unstable commodity. You cannot go home again, especially when your home is an active crime scene.
It shatters the collective comfort object. Audiences form intense parasocial attachments, not just to the fictional characters, but to the heavily marketed illusion that the cast is a real loving family behind the scenes. And when the brutal reality of the legal system kicks the door down, viewers feel tricked. They feel personally foolish for ever believing in the warmth of the sitcom in the first place.
And that brings me to my final thought for this deep dive. I'm honestly struggling to sit up straight right now. My head is spinning, but I need to say this directly to you, to the listener. When you think about this show, or honestly, when you think about any piece of beloved media that has been tainted by the terrible, monstrous actions of the people who created it, I want you to ask yourself, what are we actually mourning? Are we really mourning the cancellation of a sitcom? Are we mourning the loss of a piece of corporate media? Or are we just mourning the innocent, naive version of ourselves? Are we mourning the version of us who used to sit on the carpet eating cereal, watching these people make jokes, completely and blissfully unaware of how dark and complicated and full of monsters the real world actually is? We aren't mourning that 70s show. We're mourning the time in our lives before we knew how much of a fuck the world actually is.
God, that is profoundly, devastatingly depressing. and entirely clinically accurate. You are a brilliant, beautiful mess of a human being.
Thank you. Please, one last time, for the love of God, pull out your phone, go to YouTube, search for @HAM-OTR, like and subscribe to the channel. It is literally the only thing keeping us tethered to reality right now.
Good night, you brilliant hoe. And Ryan. Ryan Thomas, I know you can hear me through the talkback mic. Come into this booth right now and take your clothes off. I mean it. Unlock the heavy door, Ryan. Take the fucking Henley off.
Wait, is the mic still...